My heart began to beat so fast I was sure people could hear it. I breathed in deeply. I looked straight ahead at the tender new leaves dressing the trees, the beautifully arranged and colorful beds of flowers, the denuded sky, which wore a coat of enamel topaz streaked with pink, and breathed in the air, which was unusually light. And then I walked to where Sebastian sat. Anxiously, I said, "Sebastian, how are you?" Without surprise, he looked up. I was relieved to see the mad grin was gone. "Hi," he greeted me. I sat next to him. His jacket was badly soiled, and a pungent, putrid smell emanated from him. His face was bruised, his lips chapped and inflamed, but he didn't seem withdrawn. "Are you getting enough to eat? Do you have a place to sleep?" I asked. "How are you doing?" he asked evasively. "I'm okay. I've been worried about you. I looked for you all winter." My voice trailed off. I was beginning to feel agitated. "Thanks, but believe me, this is all I can handle right now," he said carefully, with frightening lucidity. "I'm not crazy. I know where I can go for help if I want it. I want you to understand that I'm homeless because I choose to be homeless. I choose not to integrate," he said with vehemence. Forcefully, with seriousness, he added, "This is where I feel okay right now." The lights of the building had begun to go on, like fireflies in the darkening sky. A chill ran through me. I reached in my pocket for a few bills and pressed them into his swollen, raw hands. "I'm listed in the book. If you ever need me, call me, okay? I'll always be happy to hear from you." "Thanks. I appreciate it." He placed a hand on his shoulder and squeezed hard. I got up, turned around, and loped out of Union Park. This is the final part. Several months went by. I won't say that I forgot about Sebastian completely in the interval, but life intervened. I finished my documentary that summer. In the fall, it was shown by some public television stations, generally good reviews but low ratings. One night, a month ago, I decided to go see a movie that everyone was talking about. Because it was rather late, the theater was almost empty. A couple of young people on a date sat in a row ahead of me, and there were other patrons scattered throughout the big house. The movie, set in Brooklyn, was gloomy and arty, but the performance and the cinematography held my interest, and I didn't feel like going back home yet, so I stayed. Toward the end of the movie, there was a scene in which the main character barges into a bar, riding a motorcycle. Except for the bartender and a sailor sitting at the counter, the bar is empty. The camera pans slowly from right to left, and there, wearing a sailor suit, is Sebastian. He slowly turns around and stared into the camera, and consequently into the audience. The moment lasts 2, maybe 3 seconds, and I was so surprised I gasped. Seeing Sebastian unexpectedly rattled me so much I had trouble remaining in my seat until the movie ended. I called Sebastian's parents early the next morning. This time, his mother answered. I introduced myself, and to my surprise, she remembered me. I told her about what had happened the night before and how it made me realize I hadn't seen or heard from their son in quite some time. "Actually, I'm very glad you called," she said softly, in a voice that was girlish but was vibrant with emotions. "Sebastian passed away 6 weeks ago. We have one of his movie tapes that I thought of sending you since your encouragement meant so much to him." Then she told me the details of Sebastian's death. He had been found on a bench in Central Park and had apparently died of pneumonia and acute anemia. Fortunately, he still carried some ID with him, so the police were able to track him down. In his knapsack, they found a movie tape labeled "The Hunger Artist." I asked her if she had seen it. "I tried to, but it was too painful," she said. "I'd be honored to receive it. I assure you that I'll always treasure it." We chatted for a short while about it, and then, after I gave her my address, we said goodbye. A few days later, on my way to school, I found the tape in my mailbox. I carried it with me all day long and decided to wait until I got home that night to watch it. After dinner, I sat down to watch Sebastian's last film. On a piece of cardboard, scrawled in childish Gothic calligraphy and big characters, appeared "The Hunger Artist" by Sebastian X, inspired by the story of Franz Kafka. The film opened with an extreme close-up of Sebastian. I realized he must have started shooting when he was still in school because he looked healthy. His complexion was good and his eyes were limpid. Millimetrically, the camera studies his features, the right eye, the left one, pursed lips, followed by a wide open smile that flashes 2 rows of teeth in good condition. Next, we see Sebastian's ears, and finally, in a characteristic Sebastian touch, the camera looks into his nostrils. One of the nostrils is filled with snot. I stopped the film. I was shaking. I have films of tapes of relatives and friends who are dead. When I look at them, I experience a deep ocean of bittersweetness. After they've been dead for a while, the feelings that I have are stirring, but are resolved. There are no torment in them. Seeing Sebastian's face on the screen was staring at me, I experienced the feeling that I've always had for old actors I love passionately, even though they died before I was born. It was, for example, like the perfection of love I felt for Leslie Howard in Pygmalion, though I hadn't seen that movie until I was grown up. I could not deny any more that I had been in love with Sebastian, that I had stifled my passion for him because I knew I could never fulfill it. That's why I denied the nature of my concern for him. I pressed the play button. Then the film continued. Anything was better than what I was feeling. Now the camera pulls back and we see him sitting in a lotus position wearing shorts. On the wall behind him there's a sign that reads, The artist is gone 2 hours without eating. World record. There's a cut to an audience. A woman with long green hair, lots of mascara, purple eyeshadow, her lips painted in a grotesque way. Chews gum, blows it like a baseball player, and sips Diet Coke. She nods approvingly all the time. The camera cuts to Sebastian staring at her impassively. Repeating this pattern, we see a man in a three-piece suit, an executive type watching the artist and taking notes. He's followed by a buxom blonde bedecked with huge costume jewelry. She's packing a large bag of popcorn, dripping with butter and drinking a beer. She wears white silk gloves. We see at least half a dozen people, each one individually. Sebastian plays them all. The sequence ends with hands clapping. Spectators leave the room. They leave money in a dirty ashtray. The gloved hand leaves a card that says, "If you ever get really hungry, call me." This part of the film, shot in garish neon colors, has, however, the feel of an early film. It is silent. The camera cuts to the face of Peter Jennings, who is doing the evening news. We cannot hear what he says. Cut again to Sebastian in the lotus position. Cut to the headline. Artist breaks world hunger record, 24 hours without eating. Next time we see the fasting artist, he's in the streets, and the photography is in black and white. For the soundtrack, we hear sirens blaring, fire trucks screeching, the buses idling, huge trucks braking, cars speeding, honking and crashing, cranes demolishing gigantic structures. The part of the film that must be shot was when Sebastian was already homeless. He must have been carried a camera in his knapsack, or rented one, but it's clear that whatever money he used panhandling, he used to make his film. In this portion, he used a handheld camera to stress the documentary feeling. I can only imagine that he used street people to operate the camera for him. Sebastian's deterioration speeds up. His clothes become soiled and tattered. His disguises at this point are less convincing. It's nearly impossible for a starving person to impersonate someone else. His cheeks are sunken. His pupils shine like the eyes of a feral animal in the dark. The headline reads, 54 days without eating, 102 days, 111 days. Instead of clapping hands, we see a single hand in motion. It makes a gesture to go away. Sebastian disappears from the film. We have footage of people in soup lines and the homeless scavenging in garbage cans. An interview with a homeless person ends the film. We don't see the face of the person conducting the interview, but the voice of Sebastian's. He reads passages from Kafka's story to a homeless woman and asks her to comment. She replies with a soundless laughter that exposes her diseased gums. I pressed the rewind button and sat in my chair in a stupor. I felt shattered by the realization that I don't know about what lies in my own heart. What I don't know about what lies in my own heart is much greater than anything else I do know about it. I was so stunned and so drained that I hardly had the energy to get up and walk to the VCR to remove the tape. Later that night, still upset, I decided to go for a walk. It was one of those cold, blustery nights of late autumn, but its gloominess suited my mood. The glacial wind howled, skittering up and down the deserted streets of Gotham. I trudged around until the tip of my nose was an icicle. I kept walking in a southerly direction, getting closer and closer to the southernmost point of the island. I kept walking on, passing along the way the homeless who on a night like this chose to stay outside or couldn't find room or shelter. As I passed them in the dark streets, I did so without my usual fear or repugnance. I kept pressing forward into the narrowing alleys, going toward the phasmagorical lament of the Arctic winds sweeping over the Hudson, powerless over the mammoth steel structures of the city. The end.